Hello everyone, and in this video we are going to be walking through how you can set up your own language model API, like a ChatGPT API, with the free tier on AWS. We're going to be using a T2 micro instance, and to show this thing working on my local Mac here, I'm going to be posting this JSON payload to my public IPv4 address of my T2 micro instance, and we're going to be hitting the Ollama service, and we're going to be using the Qwen 2 model, and you guys can see what the response looks like. So it's pretty fast. You can change what kind of question you're prompting it with, but you can see that if you had a front end right now, you'd be getting that ChatGPT like layout in terms of like a conversation happening here. And so now we'll get started in terms of how we can spin up these instances and configure the networking so that we can make calls to it from other devices, so we can integrate this with other tools like a web server. So basically the first thing we're going to be doing is launching an instance, and I'm going to call this Ollama, and we're going to be following the same steps to keep this on the free tier. So Ubuntu and the T2 micro, that's the only one we can go with. I'm going to give it a key pair. You can also make one if you don't have one already. And then I'm going to allow HTTPS and HTTP traffic. And we're also going to have to modify this because Ollama is going to be running on port 11434. So we're not done yet on that part. And then I'm going to give this thing 10 gigs of the EBS volume, and we're going to launch it. Okay, and so we're going to go to our instances, and I'm going to refresh, and we've got our running instance now, so I'm going to connect to it, and I'm going to use the EC2 instance connect. Okay, so here we are in our instance, and now what I'm going to be doing is installing Ollama. So we're just going to be running these wget commands to get that install file, and then we're going to be running that install file, which is just a shell script. Okay, and now that Ollama is installed, I'm going to just check the status of it. So it should be a running service on our machine. So you can see that it's enabled and active, which is great. You can also see right here that it is running and listening on port 11434 of our local host. And so just to test that, we can send a curl command. So I'm going to curl, and you should see that Ollama is running in your response. So that means you're on track. And now, because we want to make sure that this particular Ollama service is going to be reachable by other machines like a local Mac or a web server somewhere else, what we need to do is we need to edit the ollama.service file. So that's the next command we're going to be doing. And you can see that in this file, we can paste in some lines to configure it. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that Ollama service on this machine can basically receive calls from any IPv4 address. So we're just going to paste it in like this. You need to paste it in between these lines. If you paste it below, it's just going to be not acknowledged. And then because this is nano, to write out, to save it, you're going to press Control O on your keyboard. It's going to ask you what you want to call it. So I'm just going to hit enter. And so it tells us that it just wrote this file, and you're going to hit Control X to exit. And if you wanted to verify that you've successfully modified the file, if you paste in this command cat etc systemmd, you can view the actual config file. So we do see that the lines we wrote in here to tell the Ollama service that it can serve requests coming from other IP addresses. That's how you can confirm it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to reload the daemon on the Ubuntu machine, and then we're going to restart the Ollama service because we've modified its config file. And then another thing you can do is you can run this command ss-napt, and it's just going to show us which ports of this machine are allowed to get traffic. So we can see that again, that 11434, the Ollama service port, is listening to any calls we're getting. So that's good. And now What we're going to have to do though is we're going to have to go back to the AWS console, and we're going to need to edit the security group, because on our EC2 instance running in the cloud, it's expecting calls from that 11434 port, but our security group isn't going to let that happen. So there's a little firewall in the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the security group, and we're going to edit the inbound rules, and we're going to add a custom TCP rule, specifically 11434, and we're going to let it come basically from anywhere, and we're going to save that rule. And so now that we've done that, if we go onto our back to our EC2 instance connect, you can see it tells us what the IPv4 address is of our EC2 instance. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to make this half screen. I'm going to open up a terminal window right here. I'm going to clear that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a GET request to that. So we're going to do curl, and then that, and then specifically that port. And so now we are successfully getting a response from our Ollama web server, which is our Ollama server. So it's now on this T2 micro instance for us, which is cool. And so with that out of the way, the next thing we're going to be doing is in the Ollama server itself now, I'm going to pull the Qwen 2 model. So we're just going to run this command, and specifically we want the 0.5b version of it because it's a very small instance. So this is the smaller token version. And we're going to try to run it, and we're going to get the same issue we've had previously where because this is a T2 micro instance, it's only got a gig of RAM, and of that gig only 630 megs are available, but the model needs 843. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a swap file to allocate some of the EBS volume to help make up for the fact that it has only so much memory. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create that swap file, so give this thing a moment. And then we're going to change the permissions so that only root can do read or write. And we're going to, I'll paste all these commands into a Google Doc so you guys can follow along, but basically we're just activating our swap file so that we can run our model locally on the free tier. And so we can see we've now got our swap file created with that extra gig of RAM allocated now. Not really RAM, but it's just able to get us past that barrier. So now if I go up to the command, we're able to now have this work as expected, which is great. So, you know, just to test it very quickly, we can say, what is 5 times 4 minus 7? And so, you know, it's answering our questions. And then to end our session, you can just do /by. And so the other thing I want to call out is that Ollama is still running on the local machine. So if I go here, you can see that it's running, which means it's actively serving requests. I can go back to my own console on my remote or local computer and confirm it. So now what we're going to be doing is sending a post request to our IP address just to test it out. So I'm going to edit a JSON payload that I have right here. And we can see that it's giving us answers from our local machine. So we've now successfully set up our Ollama server so that we're able to call it from any other machines. And obviously this is not a good production environment. You're going to want to have some kind of authentication in the way. Otherwise, you're going to blow up your EC2 bill and other stuff. But for the sake of getting off the ground and you know, really organizing or compartmentalizing your language model service, now we've done it with a little T2 micro instance on the free tier. So now we can start integrating this with more apps, providing it more context, and getting it to answer kind of harder questions. So that's it for this. I hope it's helpful.